Kia ora, I'm Helen King, and you're listening to Cancer Conversations, the podcast you never thought you'd need for the diagnosis you never want to hear. Quick note on today's episode. There is some swearing, so hop on headphones if there are little ears listening. We also cover the topic of incurable cancer and death, and if this isn't something you feel up to, skip this episode and check out another from a previous season. Today's guest is Aucklander Aimee-Rose Yates, who was 28 when she learned she had incurable bowel cancer. With the knowledge that her life will be much shorter than she had planned for, Aimee-Rose is trying to enjoy every moment, and to do this, she has created a fuck it list.
They said to me, "We found a suspicious area." Yep, I knew it. From that moment, I knew it. Like, life is not always about the big moments. Like, sure, the big moments stick out, but life is also about enjoying, I don't want to say the mundane, but it's the best word that I can describe. Yeah. What do you mean I'm going to die? I barely lived.
Yeah.
But then there are days where I'm like, what can you do? The first one that was on the list was making s'mores, and which I did. Delicious, very messy though.
A massive thank you to Look Good Feel Better and Dry July for making this podcast possible. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to good podcasts. Aimee-Rose, welcome. It is such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So we first met because your sister Bex slipped into my DMs on Instagram and said, "Hey, I have a sister who has a fuck it list, and on that list is to be a podcast guest. Would you be open to meeting her?" And I thought, yeah, sure, why not? Not knowing what would happen. And then I met you via Zoom and just thought, what an exceptional person. Of course, I'd love to sit down and talk more with you about your experience. And here we are. But there's always there's always a tinge of sadness, I think, when you're talking to someone about their cancer experience, because my experience has been is that I meet the most amazing people through the worst diagnosis that we probably have in our lives. So let's start and talk a little bit about why you have a fuck it list.
My life got flipped upside down with this wonderful little thing we call cancer, and it just kind of made me go, fuck it. I've known pretty much from the beginning that it's been a terminal diagnosis, which is both a blessing and a curse. And so that is why I actually called it a fuck it list, because I was like, fuck it. I mean, what do I have to lose? And so my sister knew all about it, which was cool. And I've alluded to it with other people over the years, but it was a very sneaky peek on a reel that I made that Beck saw this lovely dream of mine to be on a podcast, because being my older sister, she knows how much I love to chat and chat and chat and chat. And then she got in contact with you, and pretty much a day later, while I was in Japan, she messaged me and said, "Hey, I hope you don't mind, but I've gone ahead and done this," as only Bex can do. I mean, she is just the epitome of the best sister in the world. So I almost shouldn't have been surprised, but it was also a happy surprise that there was someone who would actively want to listen to me. So, you know.
Of course we do. Who wouldn't want to listen to you? You're a delight.
I could probably name a few.
Do you know, the thing that really struck me when I first had a conversation with you was, I don't know what the right word is. I almost want to say the grace with which you have traversed the diagnosis, because you were so young when you were diagnosed, and now you were living with the knowledge that, you know, you have a terminal diagnosis, and it just blows my mind the way that you have described living with it. And I think it's really important to sort of go back to the moment you were diagnosed and then talk a little bit about the reasons why you are dealing with it in the way that you are. So what led you to being diagnosed with bowel cancer?
So I had really bad acne in 2019 as an adult, which is never fun. Recently engaged, my friend Steph got me in contact with a really good skin therapist who said that I was, that a lot of my skin issues could be to do with being lactose intolerant and or like an allergy to dairy. So I whipped those out of my life and I found that I stopped having issues with my skin and things. When I would have when I would have bits of dairy, I would notice that sometimes I would get a bit of, how do I say this, diarrhea.
Yes.
And so when I would eat a cheeseburger after a bottomless brunch or do things like that, and I would have bouts of diarrhea, it wouldn't really faze me. I My sister had a colonoscopy in, I want to say 2020, and then she needed to have a follow-up one in 2022 because of a diagnosis she had called, now watch me butcher this, sessile polyposis syndrome. I don't know what it is, so please don't ask.
Okay, we'll look at. I'll Google it afterwards.
And they recommended that family members have a colonoscopy just to rule it out. So I thought, okay, I just have a bit of diarrhea, but I don't think I have whatever Bex has. Fast forward to, I believe it was the 12th of July, 2022. Went in there, didn't have a fun time. Came out and the doctor said, we'd just like to meet with you and your husband in one of the rooms. So I went, oh, yeah, maybe they just want to be like, oh, you should really eat less cheese, or like, why did you have to like eat so much bread, or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, my sister was very proud about how well prepared her bowels were. And I was worried that mine had not been well prepared and I was going to have to do the whole prep again, which, as anyone who has had a colonoscopy knows, not fun.
Yeah.
And they said to me, we found a suspicious area. Yep, I knew it. From that moment, I knew it. And I was like, okay, I've just got to deal with this. And they said, now we don't know for sure, but we've got to give you a CT scan. And I'm like, honey, I could diagnose myself. I know, I just know that I have it. I just know that I have it. There was something in me that was like, yep, it's 100% cancer. I didn't diagnose. I didn't openly share the fact that I was going through this. Obviously my husband was there, but I told close family and a couple of friends just to let them know. But July the 18th, 2022, I walked into the surgeon's office and she said, you got cancer. And I was like, all right, what do we do next? Like, I've got it. There's nothing I can do about that. But like, what's the plan? There's got to be a plan somewhere. This all stems from my mother being diagnosed with cancer when I was 9 years old. So my cancer and my mum's cancer aren't the same, and we don't know if the polyposis or whatever it is hereditary, because it's likely the polyposis which has sort of helped develop my cancer, essentially.
Yeah.
So, but we have to wait for genetic testing to figure out what that could be. I'm fortunate in the fact that I don't have any children myself, so I don't have to worry about future concerns from there. But yeah, it was a heck of a time in my life, a heck of a time in my lovely husband's life, who has never dealt with any form of cancer. Yeah. Whereas me and my family, my mum had it, she died from it. My stepmother had it. A few of my aunties have had it. I think even my granddad had it. So I'm very familiar with this world of cancer. But my lovely husband, I call them the livers. He had his great-grandma alive when he was 16. Like, they are just a family of livers. And I'm like, mate, you have bet on the wrong horse. Why did you do that? But yeah, that is sort of what got me here today. I actually have a tattoo on my arm that says Bex is my hero. Because if I didn't get that colonoscopy, I don't know what would have happened. Eventually I would have figured out that I had cancer, but nothing was really happening for me that gave me any concern. There were no blood in the stools, nothing else. When I read through all would you have cancer? I was like, don't have that, don't have that, don't have that. Oh, I just occasionally get diarrhea when I eat cheese.
Like so many people.
like so many people.
I feel like that's quite an interesting and a very good point to make, that having screening is so important, knowing your body is so important, following hunches or pushing for diagnosis. But sometimes cancer just has no symptoms. And it is that stroke of good timing or somebody else having a test that leads to the diagnosis, which I think is sometimes the scary and crazy thing about cancer, is that you can be walking around one day not feeling sick, not realizing that your body is doing something a bit freaky, and then the next day, or you walk into the doctor's office and you hear those words, "I'm sorry, you have cancer." It's insane in a way. And unless you've had that moment, and unless you've been through, if you're a liver, you probably haven't been through this, because I've been through it with my mother as well. And it is such a surreal moment to be told that. But I think it's really interesting, and I've been thinking about this a lot since I first had that first conversation with you, because you said to me, "I'm glad it was me and not my sister who got this diagnosis," which just blew my mind. And I wondered about, what is it that you think you've been able to deal with it in the way that you have, versus being worried if your sister had it?
I think, and it's really hard to say this, because in no way do I not think that my sister is strong enough to handle this.
Yeah.
I just don't want anyone that I love to go through this. And if anyone had to, I would rather it be me. Like, I would rather be the one to shoulder the burden and, go through the blood tests, go through the chemo, go through all of that, because I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I really wouldn't. And
No.
I would worry so much for my sister, who has spent her entire life making sure that she looks out for me and looks out for me. And I always wondered from a young age, is one of us going to get cancer? When your mum's diagnosed at 9, you can't help but have these thoughts. And so I wondered, okay, if it's me, like, you've just got to do everything you can. And if it's Bex, you've got to do everything you can for her. Mm. And it just worked out that it was yours truly.
Yeah. And did you know at that time of diagnosis that it was incurable, or when did you find that out?
So diagnosis was 18th of July 2022. Went in for a cheeky little iron infusion as well, because they said my iron levels were low. I was like, man, that's the least of my problems right now.
Yeah.
But they said, okay, like, it's a tumour. We'll get it out with some surgery. And I'm like, cool, bang, bang, boom. I'll have 6 months of cancer and then I'm done. And then they said, oh, we'd like you to go on for this special scan called a PET scan. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't sound like cats and dogs, but all right. And then I had to become radioactive for 5 hours, which was super fun. And then it was actually quite, timing is such a funny thing. I've always been very, like, not reliant on dates, but dates always really speak to me. And it was on the 4th of August, 2022, 20 years to the day of my mum's diagnosis.
Wow.
That I found out that my cancer was terminal. It was after school. I had to take a phone call in my deputy principal's office, and the surgeon called me, and she, not verbatim, but she pretty much said, yeah, you lit up like a Christmas tree, all those lymph nodes. She didn't say that, don't worry. Now, Dr. Nagin is incredible. I love her. But she was pretty much like, you lit up. This is, unfortunately, this is incurable. And I remember just crying in my DP's office being like, okay, I thought I might get cancer one day, but I didn't think it would be this. Mm. And then I had surgery, I want to say like between 3 to 5 days later. And then we had an appointment on the 25th of August, which reiterated my I was going to say terminality, but I don't know if that's a word, my terminal diagnosis.
It is crazy, isn't it? That synchronicity of dates. And you've told me a little bit about your mum, and I'd love to, for you to share a bit about this, because being a 9-year-old, it is such a pivotal time from 9 to 12. You're sort of in that weird transition of you're a child, and then maybe you might start to go through puberty and you're shifting towards those awful teenage years, and you go through an experience of losing a parent. How much influence did your mum's, I guess, experience or the way that she dealt with her cancer influence the way that you've dealt with it?
I mean, watch me get on my pedestal, as my sister likes to say, because when it comes to our mum, I feel like I'm just her biggest champion. I'd be probably fighting my dad for that title, because she was just one of the best human beings I could ever like dream of. And the fact that she was my mum, like, I've already hit the jackpot. She was incredible. And the fact that she had cancer, dealt with 2 children, dealt with working, and dealt with the roller coasters that come with cancer, I just couldn't not be in awe of her. And so when I got sick, I thought, okay, how can I even slightly emulate what she's done? And that's all I've tried to do.
Yeah. And how have you done that? What have you sort of embodied about your mum as you've had to do this day by day?
She just really embraced this whole. There was this ad that used to be played on TV, and it was this old man, and he had like this white hair, and he was like, "Don't touch the hair," and it was an Italian thing, and she always just found it really funny. And I remember once her very much just embodying this, like, life sucks, get over it. Like, there is nothing that I can do to change my situation. I can only change my reaction to it. Like, she would never make her cancer diagnosis the forefront of her being as well, which has been very important to me. Like, I don't want people to just think of me as Aimee-Rose, the girl who has cancer. It's like, no. I'm Aimee-Rose. I am a friend. I am a wife. I am a teacher. I'm good looking. I'm funny. I'm kind. I also have cancer.
Yeah.
But also cancer doesn't have me, because I am so much more than my diagnosis. And I think that that's what my mum wanted too. Like, she wanted to be so much more than her diagnosis as well.
I love that so much. Because I feel like for me, my cancer experience has defined part of my life, and it has definitely been a difficult road, sort of navigating like post-treatment and trying to figure out like how to sort of put myself back together. But it's that same thing where that was part of my timeline that has influenced who I am today. But yeah, if you let it consume you, I feel like that's the dark road. That's where you get really sucked into the sort of the abyss.
Yep. 100%. And there are days that I do. I mean, one of the first days when I stupidly Googled my prognosis, one of my best friends had to come over because I was on the floor sobbing, thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die. What? What do you mean I'm going to die? I barely lived.
Yeah.
But then there are days where I'm like, what can you do?
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that it's really important to share the good and the bad, because I think when you've had cancer or you're in the cancer world, it can be really easy to just kind of support and endorse this whole idea, oh, you're a warrior, you're so strong, and look how well you're dealing with it, because we need to give each other the space to be on the floor crying or angry, because you're dealing with this really shitty diagnosis. So allowing each other to be able to have both of those and both be perfectly acceptable responses is so important. Yeah.
I so agree with that, because you're right. It is when, and especially when I was first diagnosed, you can beat this, Aimee-Rose, you can do it, don't give up. And I'm like, well, I kind of need to give up because like everything is against me at the
Yeah.
moment. I remember, especially last year, I started to give a little to help top up what my medical insurance wasn't funding in terms of my chemotherapy. And I'd resisted it for a while because I was like, I don't want to just go and say, hi guys, I need money because I'm dying, tee hee. Could you, instead of buying a coffee for a week, could you give it to me so I can have these life-saving drugs pumped into my arm and hopefully prolong my life a bit? I mean, how do you ask people for that? And they recommended that my oncologist Sanjeev recommended that I do a video, and I went, oh god. And I'd had a long day at school, and my car battery, like it was all of these things that had happened. And I remember I was sitting in my room, and I did, I think about 7 takes, and I got to the end and I was just like, look, I don't want to do this, but here I am. I'm so sorry that I have to do this. This sucks. This probably says more about the New Zealand medical system than anything else. Give me money. If you don't want to, that's fine. What are you going to do? I'm probably going to die anyway. Meh. And then I just remember crying and being like, I hate that this is what my life has come to. This was never in my plan. I had very, very much set out what I wanted to do, and I did not factor this in.
No.
So yeah, that was one of my days. But then the next day I woke up and I went, "Lols, can't believe I did that." Oh well, flick. Because what do you do? What could I have done? I could be sad about it and be
Yeah.
upset and be sad for the rest of my life, or I can, take my lumps and get on with it.
I feel like that kind of encapsulates resilience. Like I've had conversations with a few people, especially within the cancer context, about what resilience is. Because I feel like we throw that word around a lot, oh, people need more resilience. But no one ever talks about actually what is resilience. And I think that's what it is. It is accepting I am facing something that I have no control over. Like you have no control over what is going on in your body. I've got no control over what's going on in my body, but allowing yourself that moment to be really pissed off and then go, oh well, what can I do? I've got to keep moving forward. And to me, that is a type of resilience that I have encountered over and over again with people who have been diagnosed with cancer, whether it's curative or incurable, is that that's what you learn, is that we have no control over anything. And once you accept that, it can be quite a freeing moment. And I imagine that's what it was like for you.
Oh, hugely. I was like, you know what? Aaron, I don't like those shoes you're wearing. And I've been holding that in for 5 years, but now I can tell you. I did actually tell him before we got married, but that's fine. But you're so right. It is such a freeing feeling because you're like, look, I am on this earth for a finite amount of time. And I just need to not care about things so much because I cared hugely before. There's a quote from The Office from Pam Beasley, and she says something along the lines of, I hate the fact that how Al Qaeda don't like me, and I so feel that on every level because I hate that there are people in this world who don't like me. They've
Yes.
never met me, and if I gave them the best of me, they would love me, I'm sure. But also, I don't want to spend however long I have catering to all of these people who at the end of the day will go, oh, Aimee-Rose is dead. Oh well. Gonna get on with Wordle or whatever else they're doing in the day. And that's okay. I would rather spend time with people who I love and who love me and doing stuff I love too.
Yeah.
Because isn't that the most important thing? Not being worried about, old Joe down the road who thinks my haircut's silly.
Yes. Yes. I think it is. And what annoys me is that sometimes to learn these lessons, the stakes are so high. It's like, why can't I have learnt this when I was a child or a teenager? All those years that I wasted.
So wasted. I would go and absolutely slap 16-year-old Aimee-Rose and be like, man, you've got this amount of time and this amount of cares about things. Let's just get on with it.
Yeah, like, shake that shit off, mate.
Yeah, shake it. So Taylor Swift, Bex will love that part. She's trying to get me into a Swiftie, so that one's for you, Bex.
When we were talking last time, I think one of the things that struck me, and this was like my own sort of like preconceived ideas about someone who's living with cancer, is that you're a school teacher and you still go to work and you've got your kids, and I think it's hilarious because children are wild. I mean, they will tell you exactly what they think. So how important has it been to keep teaching and have that part of your life?
I have always wanted to be a teacher. Again, this is from my mum, who wanted to also be a teacher, and unfortunately, because of her diagnosis, she didn't get there. And I always feel like I've been quite lucky because no matter what's been going on in my life, I've always wanted to be a teacher. And I've been at the same school for my entire career, which big flex for me. And I remember the day that I was diagnosed because I thought, oh man, I've got a really cool class. This is my first year in this year level, and I'm going to lose 6 months because I'll lose the rest of the year because of cancer, and I'll just have to come back next year and I'll just have to try and figure everything out then. I had to tell my principal on her first day of being our principal that I had cancer. Not a fun conversation, but a great one if you have a principal as wonderful as I do, who was very much like, okay, we can let your class know, we can let your parents know as much as you'd like to know. And I thought, well, we may as well just tell them. And then, with the kids, I said that I was sick. So I came in the next day and one of my children asked me, do you have cancer, Mrs. Yates? And I thought, okay, yep, I've got cancer. And he said, so are your cells dividing at an abnormal rate and this is caused, and started just absolutely spewing Google at me. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know, but could you tell me? Because you might know a bit more than my doctors, apparently. And apparently he'd gone home and just searched everything up and been like, okay, let's figure out what's wrong with Mrs. Yates. And it was then that I realized, like, okay, this is not going to break these kids. Like, these kids are going to be okay. I had kids that year come up to me and say, Mrs. Yates, do you still have the cancer? Yep, still have the cancer. And they're like, oh, okay. Did you know I got this new dinosaur? And it's actually my favorite dinosaur that I like to play with. I'm like, okay, so done with me. On to you now. That's fine. But it has been so incredibly great for me to be at school because these kids kind of don't care that I'm sick. And I love them for it because I'm a very small part of their day. And in reality, I'm a very small part of their life. But the interactions that I have with them mean so much to me because a lot of when you're diagnosed with cancer is people start treating you differently. Mm-hmm. And they start acting differently around you and things start changing. And I don't know about you, but I don't really deal well with change. I deal well with a nice strict routine. Love that. The rest of my life, just, wake up, whatever. But cancer doesn't allow you to have those things. Cancer really sends you on, life is a roller coaster and you just got to ride it. But school provides that sort of routine and that normality that I crave. And the kids are just great. And it takes me back to thinking, okay, well, if I was 5 years old and if I was coming to school, who would I want to deal with? And I'm very lucky I've been able to go back to some part-time work. So as of this term, I'll be team teaching with another teacher when I'm not on chemo, a group of year zeros who are very fresh to school. So pray for me while I field a lot of questions left, right and centre and deal with snotty noses and wet shoelaces on a sunny day and all those wonderful things. But also, it's going to be that normality. It's going to be these kids. And if I have someone else that I need to show up for every day, like that just fills my heart with sunflowers and sunshine.
Oh, yes. Yes. Kids are so good at that. I think because they're so in the moment, it helps you just be there too.
100%.
So cancer, I mean, we've kind of alluded to it in the way that your cancer always ripple through our families, our friends, our communities. And you're doing this with a partner, with your husband. How have you coped with this as a couple?
Now, if there was ever a part in this that I was going to cry,
This would be. I'm
this
so
will be
sorry.
no, it's fine. I've recently been undergoing some therapy, and every time I talk about Aaron, I cry. And I keep telling her, I'm like, I swear I am emotional about other people and other things. It just, you say Aaron, and I'm a blubbering mess.
Yeah.
I think cancer has made our relationship stronger, but our relationship was already strong to begin with. So it has really just strengthened those bonds. The suckiest part about cancer is, probably me dying, but it's also the fact that I am robbed of the rest of my life with Aaron, because I don't deserve this, but he doesn't deserve this. And that's a huge thing for me, because Aaron is, sorry to everyone else who's listening, but Aaron is my favorite person on this earth. And the fact that he thought he was getting a happily ever after, which is now morphed into watching your wife lie on the couch for 3 days because she's connected to a chemo pump and she can barely move.
Yeah.
He didn't sign up for that. He didn't sign up for, taking me to the hospital because I'm vomiting all of the time, or because I'm having stomach cramps, or listening to me record videos and write cards for days that I'm not going to be here anymore. He signed up for none of that. I'm just very proud of the way that he has accepted help for where he has struggled, because I think that it is hard for the person who is diagnosed, but also their immediate family. That is really tough. And I love him with all my heart, and it just sucks for him. But I think it has made us stronger, because we just don't sweat the small stuff anymore. I can get annoyed about him not hanging out in the washing till the cows come home, but in the grand scheme of things, does that actually matter that much?
Yeah.
No, it really doesn't. Him hanging up the bath mat, that's another story. But but the fact is, it's like, I don't want to stress about this, because I just want to enjoy the time I have with you. Sure, he still annoys me, and sure, I still annoy him, I assume. How I could, I don't know. But the fact that I have only got a finite amount of time left on this earth, I don't want to spend that being annoyed at him. I just want to spend that being in love with him. And I think he's the same way. And that's why I think our relationship just works.
Oh, man. You're going to make me cry.
And I didn't cry. Woo!
Yes. I think that's a really nice way of coming into your fuck it list, because you've got some amazing ones here. And then the thing that really struck me was some of them are what I would consider small but kind of magical moments. And I was talking about this with someone recently, actually, that sometimes when you've had cancer, or I assume, other sort of life-changing things, it makes you appreciate smaller moments. Being able to go to work, being able to be annoyed about the shower mat, but not being hung up afterwards. And I think that some of your list for me was just those moments, like making your own Christmas ham, or going to a pub quiz, making pulled pork, and then my favourite one, which I wish you were here in real life, because I'd actually be okay to volunteer myself for this, is to throw a drink in someone's face.
Oh, we're going to do it live on the podcast.
I know. I would be so down for this, because I think it is. I think it would be quite fun. So if you do need a volunteer, I would volunteer my face for this.
I hope someday I meet you in we're walking down the road and I've got my drink bottle and I crank that baby open and just throw it in your face.
Yes.
And you're like, what's this stranger doing? And then I go,
no.
Remember me? Got it on the podcast. You said I could do this.
Yes. Let's make
Meanwhile,
this
Aaron's
happen.
going, are you going to get arrested, or what's the vibes here? Has she done something? Do I need to be like, getting my fisticuffs out?
Yes, let's do it. So, how did you come up with this list? Like, how did you sit down and do it, or are these things that have sort of popped into your head over time and gone, yep, that needs to be on it?
The first one that was on the list was making s'mores, and which I did. Delicious, very messy though.
Yes.
And I thought, life is not always about the big moments. Like, sure, the
No.
big moments stick out, but life is also about enjoying, I don't want to say the mundane, but it's the best word that I can
Yeah.
describe. And I think I got stuck for so long in just sort of riding the wave of going along, like, okay, wake up, go to school, come home, eat dinner, lie on the couch, go to bed, next, 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 next. And I always thought, like, oh, I'll make snickerdoodles one day. Oh, yeah, I'll do a Christmas ham one day. Oh, yeah, I'll throw a drink in someone's face someday. Like, I will do all
Yeah.
of these things one day. But the amount of one days that I have in my life were like this, and now they are like this. So I don't have many one days left. And I thought, I don't want the last years of my life to just be filled with these ginormously big moments. I also want to be able to find joy in the little moments too, like baking snickerdoodles, which are delicious, like going to a pub quiz and getting 69 points, which was hilarious.
Yes.
And doing all of these little things, because that they also make up life too. And they're also really cool memories. Some of my favorite memories are the smaller things on my bucket list. And I love that.
I think that's, yeah, I think I agree. Like, I think we can do really big, amazing things. And I imagine for you, going to Japan and going on a bullet train would have been amazing. But sometimes there are those moments where you're with friends or a loved one or anything like that, where it's either you're experiencing just pure joy, or you are laughing hysterically about nothing. Just those little bits, or yeah, trying a s'more for the first time, and it just being this first moment of, wow, that's sweet, but amazing. Yeah.
Exactly that. And I can go into my kitchen and I can remember, like, oh, yes, this is where I, made my pretzel dough. And oh, this is where I, cut into my Christmas ham. I don't have to go to Japan and, be like, this is where, I mean, I wouldn't touch a bullet train, but like, this is the bullet train I went on. Like, I can also do that stuff at home. I can also, do that stuff with Aaron.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think about something you said before, and I think maybe this is a good place to sort of wrap up our conversation nicely. But I think sometimes when we are teenagers, we can get lost in what's going on in our lives, or just, the ridiculousness of being a teenage girl. If you could go back to 16-year-old Aimee, what would you say to her?
Boys are yuck. No, I wouldn't. I mean, most boys are yuck, but you will marry a wonderful one. Honestly, I would just say, I'd just give her a hug. And that's really funny because I actually hate hugs. I'm not a big hugger. So and this is also the thing with cancer. Sorry to get on a rant, but a lot of people, when you get cancer, oh, you're sick. Oh, and I'm like, ugh.
I know.
Go away.
Get away with your germs.
Just don't hug me. But I would just give her a hug and I would be like, look, everything is going to be okay. Like, and because everything is. Like, yes, I have cancer, but I've got a husband who loves me, and I've got 2 cats, and I've got wonderful friends, and I've got a great family, and I've got a great job. So yes, I have cancer, but I have all of these other things. And I think young Aimee-Rose was very wrapped up in, like, being cool or, like, looking out for people who didn't always look out for me, and trying to be the most for everybody instead of being the most for herself. And I would just say, like, just show up for yourself, believe in yourself, trust yourself, and just enjoy life. Don't enjoy someone else's notion of life. Enjoy your life.
I love that, and I feel like that's maybe what I would have said to 16-year-old Helen. Boys are gross.
Yeah, just boys are gross. And then 16-year-old Aimee-Rose, what do you mean? I love him. And then I would have, the whole with yourself. Stop being so silly.
Exactly. Pull yourself together.
Yeah. Come on, woman.
Aimee-Rose, I am so glad that Beck slipped into my DMs and that I have been able to meet you, hopefully one day in person, so you can throw water in my face or a drink of your choice in my face. But just so I could understand more about your experience, but also to be reminded that cancer isn't all of me, and that actually a lot of the beauty and things that we enjoy in life are actually the mundane. So thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining me. If you want to find out more about what's on offer from Look Good Feel Better, head over to www.lgfb.co.nz and join me next week for another cancer conversation.